I'll go ahead and do an introduction.
Go ahead.
Yes. Today we're honored to have with us Professor Melissa Dark, who is Professor and Assistant Dean in the School of Technology, also by courtesy in the Department of Computer Science, and long-standing, I don't know, founding member of CERIAS? Not quite founding member of CERIAS. Is one of the people who put education in CERIAS.
Pillar of CERIAS.
Yes, definitely a pillar of CERIAS. She is also a good example of the value of a Purdue education, having received her bachelor's, master's, and PhD here in the College of Education. So
that's true.
Anyway,
Thanks, Chris.
turn it over to Professor Dark.
Thank you. Oh, come on in. So I'm Melissa Dark, and I'm a professor in computer and information technology. And I started at CERIAS in 2000. And I was there from full-time from 2000 until 2003 and a half. So the title of my talk is actually Multidisciplinary Perspectives in Information Assurance and Security. And you see I've got a colon there. So that's the broad part of my talk. And then the second part of my talk is bringing in those multidisciplinary perspectives to specifically show you a public policy aspect of information assurance and security. And we're going to focus on data breach disclosure policy in the United States because it's fairly recent. We've gone from 0 to 44 state data breach disclosure laws in 6 years' time, which is very rapid growth in public policy. Policy doesn't happen quickly. So that amount of policy and that amount of time is really pretty revolutionary. So a little bit about me. Chris Clifton said I started at CERIAS several years ago and was primarily working in information assurance and security education. That's true. And when I was working in the security education piece of it, I did a variety of things. And it ranged from producing multimedia materials and short courses that were used by business and industry. And if you go to the CERIAS website, you can still find a couple of examples of some of those products, even though by now, I'm sure some of the case studies that we used in the training and awareness materials are out of date. Security changes pretty fast. Also worked on some K-12 projects, and that ranged all the way from trying to help school corporations. In Indiana, we call them school corporations. They're really school districts, trying to help school corporations better secure their systems. As you know, a lot of educational institutions have systems that are fairly wide open. That includes universities. It also includes K-12 school districts. And then a little bit of work in trying to get information assurance and security integrated into the high school curriculum in places where it would make sense. But the majority of my work when I worked in security education was working with colleges and universities from across the country, trying to help them develop programs of study courses in information security. So I had some DoD funding that ran some faculty curriculum development projects, developed over 200 security courses that were integrated into colleges and universities, and after 3 years of the project, it had affected about 10,000 students, and then I quit keeping track of the number of students affected. You can only do that so long. So security education, I think, has been used in a preventative way. And the notion is that if you can better educate people, and by people we could be talking about systems designers, we could be talking about developers, we could be talking about implementers, we could be talking about policymakers, we could be talking about users. So I mean people very globally. If you could better educate people, they would make better decisions. And if they would make better decisions, we would have an improved state of security. That's the notion behind almost all of the educational efforts, far beyond CERIAS's efforts. So embedded in there are a couple of words. One is better. People would make better choices. And better is usually value-driven. And so it was that notion of better choices that led me to start looking at, well, from what base do they make better choices? Why do they make bad choices or less good choices? What's driving their sense of better? And that's what led me to my work in information assurance and security ethics. Ethics is a field that's divided into microethics. Well, you can divide it lots of ways. One way is microethics and macroethics. Microethics are the ethics that all of us have in making our own individual decisions. Macroethics are things that become societal issues. It's no longer just a matter of how I teach you to make a decision about right and wrong so that you're a better information security officer or privacy officer. It becomes, how is this issue, this societal issue, this ethical issue, an issue for large groups of people? Most macroethical issues are shaped by public policy or shaped by economics. And so it was that leap that then started getting me interested in public policy. Much of public policy is closely aligned to economics. And it's closely aligned to that branch of economics that is sometimes called welfare economics. And by welfare, we don't mean food stamps. We mean things that policy positions and decisions that improve social welfare or social well-being, and the economic tools that go along with analyzing that. So that's the path that I've been traveling that led me here today to talk to you a little bit about these multidisciplinary perspectives. I need to start, I think, with a few basic principles. The first one is that information assurance and security, in my opinion, is inherently normative. And I know that sometimes from a technology-centric position, we tend to think of technology as being value neutral. Technology doesn't have values embedded in it. It's stuff. But I would contend that technology is developed by people and enabled by policy sometimes that directs funds. And there are values behind those decisions. So I don't think that we can say that there are not value associations. And then when you look at many of the issues that information assurance and security is about, privacy, access, ownership, intellectual property, cybercrime, usually at the intersection of those issues are questions about what ought we do? What should we do? And ought and should are normative words. They're about norms, they're about values. Normative thinking, to just add a little bit more to round it out, can be contrasted to positivistic thinking. You know, the goal of positivistic thinking is to describe or explain something. So you usually have factual statements. Those factual statements can range from being quite simple to quite elaborate and sophisticated. Normative statements, it's possible to make factual statements about norms. You know, I could give a survey right now, ask you a series of questions about your ethics, and I could describe the ethics of this group. So I could make positivistic statements about ethics. But inherently what you're trying to do in normative fields is make decisions about ought and should.